So in this video, I'll be giving you guys my breakout teams for the 2020 NFL season. I've done this video the past couple years. It's been a fun concept, and last year was pretty successful. I got both teams in the NFC Championship game, so that was pretty cool, the Packers and 49ers. So yeah, it's a fun video, and let me know in the comments who you guys think will break out this year, teams that had down years in 2019 or teams that we just don't expect that will have good years in 2020 in your opinion. Hopefully there's a season, obviously, but if it does, I expect these, I think it's 4 or 5 teams this year. I think I have 5 teams to break out in the 2020 season, so hopefully you enjoyed this video, and let's get into it. So 2019's results, I first picked the Green Bay Packers. They went from 6-9-1 to 13-3, went to the NFC Championship game. The biggest reason I picked them, honestly, was because Mike McCarthy was fired, and they brought in Matt LaFleur. I was not a big Mike McCarthy guy. I always wondered why he didn't utilize Aaron Jones. I thought his offense was very simple, and it didn't really max out Aaron Rodgers' potential, and those guys didn't really see eye to eye, and that relationship was definitely a bit, iffy at the end. But since they got Matt LaFleur, the offense did better last year. Their defense definitely stepped it up due to some free agent signings, the Smith brothers especially, so that team had a great year. Unfortunately, got blown out in the NFC Championship game, but going from 6-9-1 to 13-3, definitely a big improvement. For the 49ers, it was pretty easy to see that one coming. I had them on this list 2 years ago. Unfortunately, Garoppolo got hurt in 2019, but since he played in 2020, he had a really good year. The front office there makes so many great decisions. Kyle Shanahan is a genius offensively. They go 13-3. For the Cardinals, they went from 3-13 to 5-10-1. I admitted in last year's video I might be a year early on them, and then I'm going to spoil it right now. I do have the Cardinals in here once again this year, so I do think I was a bit early, but I like what they have brewing there. I like a lot of their draft picks the past couple years. I think they're going to be a good team in the 2020 season. And for the Jets, they were a team that shot themselves in the foot many times. They had some very bad losses, I think, to the Jaguars, the Dolphins, maybe another bad team in there. Sam Darnold gets mono in week 2 or week 1 after week 1, and they just weren't able to recover after that. So they had a better second half. They had that game against the Cowboys that they won, which was good for them. But for the most part, the Jets were meh. They weren't that great. They went 7-9. I thought they'd be more of an 8 or 9 win team. Maybe they do it this year. I know they lost C.J. Mosley due to the COVID and stuff like that for the season. But maybe the Jets find a way to have a good year. It really depends on Sam Darnold and whether he develops. I'm not really in on the Jets this year, but maybe that's good news because when I was in on them last year, they weren't that good. So maybe me being out on them is a good thing. So with that being said, let's get into the 2020 breakout teams. So number 1, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers, a team that didn't have the biggest offseason, but they made some pretty good low-key moves, and they have a team that last year I thought was a really good roster. Unfortunately, their quarterback wasn't there, and when your quarterback's hurt, pretty hard to win in the NFL, but I think they did the most they possibly could. They went 7-9 with 15 games of Devlin Hodges and Mason Rudolph. I mean, that's pretty impressive in my mind. That shows how good their defense was. Their defense was top 6 in the NFL in yards allowed and points allowed. It's a defense that could get better because now they have a full season of Minka Fitzpatrick. Stephon Tuitt, a good defensive end for them, missed 10 games as well. So if they get those guys back, it could be even better. Devin Bush will probably get better, the linebacker, as well as he gets older. So this is a team that I think is very close to possibly competing for a Super Bowl. I know it sounds crazy. They have a 2-time Super Bowl champion at quarterback. He needs to be right. That's the biggest thing about this team right now. If they get the real Ben Roethlisberger, the 2017, 2018 version, this team will go far in my opinion. They still have a pretty good offensive line. They have good players on defense still, their secondary especially. They have athletic linebackers, pretty good defensive linemen. We know about TJ Watt. He's a breakout star, nearly won Defensive Player of the Year last year. They still have Cameron Hayward as well. So this team defensively, really good and can be elite in my mind. They have some other players on offense that need to step up. Juju Smith-Schuster is one for sure. He kind of had a down year last year. I credit that more to the quarterbacks, and Juju got hurt at some points last year. Then there's a guy like James Conner who was great in his second year, I believe, once Le'Veon sat out for the season. They also have a wide receiver in Deontay Johnson, who's only 24 years old entering year 2. He last year had 680 yards on 59 receptions, only 92 targets. But I think he can be the number 2 guy in this offense for sure, the guy that Steelers fans wanted Martavis Bryant to be for so many years. But I think this guy can be the real deal. I'm a big fan of Deontay Johnson. He can definitely break out for sure. And they made some pretty decent free agent signings. Eric Ebron was brought over. Vance McDonald's their starter. He has his injury concerns for sure. Their left guard, Ramon Foster, year retired, so they fill in that spot with Stefan Wisniewski. And although he's not the best player, he's an average guard, but he's a two-time Super Bowl champion, has plenty of experience. He started over 100 games in his career, so that's a decent signing. Then they draft a guy like Chase Claypool, who I thought might be a tight end at first, but now he might be a wide receiver. I'm not sure how the Steelers are going to use him. Maybe he's a hybrid. We'll see. I have no idea what type of role they'll have carved out for him, but it will be interesting. He's a talented guy for sure, very athletic. I think he can be like the next Vincent Jackson type guy on the outside, and maybe even faster than Vincent Jackson, honestly, because if I remember correctly, Jackson wasn't the fastest guy, but I think Claypool ran like a 4. I'm trying to think what it was, a 4.4 maybe. It was pretty damn fast for his size. So he's definitely an explosive athlete, and we'll see what the Steelers have for him. But with Juju and Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool, I think it could be an exciting offense for sure. We know that defense is elite, so I think the Steelers are a team in 2020 that can definitely compete for a Super Bowl. Number 2, we have the Arizona Cardinals, a team that was on my list last year. They did a little worse than I expected, but still, they showed promising steps, and I think they're a team that, based on their offseason moves this year, will break out in 2020. I'm a huge Kyler Murray fan. I made a video about him like a few weeks ago. I think he's a future superstar for sure. I don't care about him being too short and all that kind of crap. He's going to be a star in my opinion. So, they made some good moves in the offseason. Jordan Phillips was brought over from the Bills. He had 9.5 sacks last year, which was a breakout year for him, so he's a good player. Devon Kennard, who was a former Giant, I know him of course from there, went to the Lions, had a couple good years there. They also had Devondre Campbell, who was a tackling machine for the Falcons the past few years. He wasn't really asked to rush the quarterback too much based on his role. Maybe he's asked to do that more in Arizona, but he's an outside linebacker, so we'll see what type of role they have carved out for him. DeAndre Hopkins was traded for. That's a great move, obviously. I think I would make that move 10 days out of 10, get rid of David Johnson, the second-round pick, and maybe a fourth, whatever it was, but great trade for them. I think there's going to be a great duo, him and Kyler Murray. They add Isaiah Simmons in the draft, a great linebacker, very versatile. I saw that the Cardinals want to make him an inside linebacker, which I personally thought was the best spot for him, so I'm happy they're doing that. I watched a lot of him because the Giants were definitely in on Isaiah Simmons, so I think inside linebacker would be a great spot for him, and he'll be able to utilize his covering ability, covering tight ends and running backs, and making tackles all over the field. And then there's Josh Jones, a tackle from Houston, and I think he's going to be a starter now because their right tackle, Marcus Gilbert, a former Steeler, actually backed out of the season, so I think he'll be the starter week 1 in all likelihood. Josh Jones, I'm a big fan of him. In my opinion, was one of the best pass protectors in the draft and based on offensive tackles, so I think it's a good pick right there. So as I said, Kyler Murray will step up in my opinion. They get a full season of Kenyon Drake, who was great for them down the stretch last year. They traded for him from the Dolphins halfway through the year. They have a bunch of young wide receivers, Christian Kirk, Andy Isabella, Hakeem Butler as well. Can those guys step up? They have good players from the 2019 class still, Byron Murphy, Zach Allen. Those guys will get better in my opinion. Patrick Peterson still at cornerback. He was suspended the first 6 games last year, came back, didn't look like the old version of himself, but maybe this year, now that he has a full off season to get ready and stuff like that, because it's hard to get suspended for 6 games then come into a season because it's essentially his week 1, but other guys is week 7. So hopefully this year he'll be better. I'm a big fan of what Cliff Kingsbury does with their offense, the spread offense. It makes their running backs' jobs a lot easier. It's just easier for Kyler Murray. He's a perfect quarterback for that system. I actually forgot about Larry Fitzgerald as well. You can't forget about him. He's not showing any signs of slowing down, really. He's getting better with age, it seems like. And I will add that the last time I doubled down on a team, it was the San Francisco 49ers, and they went to the Super Bowl. So maybe the Cardinals are in pretty good company there. Maybe they find a way to make the Super Bowl. It might be a year too early for the Cardinals once again. I know Kyler Murray is still very young. A lot of this team is still very young, but they are very talented, and in the next couple years, this might be one of the better teams in football. Number 3, we have the Cleveland Browns. This was a team I selected back in 2018. They were coming off an 0-16 season. Said to myself, there's nowhere to go but up, so I just picked them. They went 6-6, what was it, 6-9-1 or some crazy record like that. There was a tie in there, I believe. So the Browns have had a pretty good offseason, in my opinion. They made the right move with the head coach. I did not want Freddie Kitchens to be back there. If Kitchens was still the coach, I would not have had the Browns on this list. That's how much I disliked what he did there last year. So they hired Kevin Stefanski from the Vikings, who got a career year out of Kirk Cousins, brought down his turnovers a lot, made him very efficient. I think he can do the same thing for Baker Mayfield, so I'm very excited for him there. Their new GM, I forget the guy's name, but he's made some very good moves since taking over this team. So they signed Austin Hooper. I was confused at first because they had David Njoku. I was like, what are you going to do with 2 tight ends? But I guess they want to do two tight end sets. Hopefully it works out for them. But Hooper's a good player. He's gotten better every year in Atlanta. He's still very young. I think he's like 25, 26, something like that. So still a young guy. I think it's a good move. They bring in Jack Conklin, which is for a team that needed a tackle badly, especially a right tackle. They get a good one here in Jack Conklin. He was really good his rookie year, was really good last year, was up and down in between, was hurt one year, but outside of that is a very solid right tackle. Bring in BJ Goodson, a solid linebacker for depth, a good tackler, not the best coverage guy, but a good tackler. They bring in Case Keenum, the backup, Baker Mayfield. They give him a good amount of money too, but I guess that's a pretty important backup to have. He can probably mentor Baker Mayfield. He's worked with Kevin Stefanski in Minnesota in the past. They brought in Andrew Billings, and I did not know this, but he's sitting out the 2020 season due to COVID concerns, so he won't be there, but that would have been a nice depth signing. They have Andrew Sendejo. I remember him with the Vikings, a solid safety. He'll probably mentor Grant Delpit. That's probably a good move there. Maybe teach him how to tackle better or something like that. I think he's a solid player. Still played with the Eagles last year. Kevin Johnson, a cornerback for depth reason, coming from the Texans. Carl Joseph, who's a former first-round pick safety of the Raiders. He was taken somewhere in the 20s. Very talented player, very hard hitter, but just cannot stay healthy. Hopefully, for Cleveland, he can. I do believe he's on the PUP list. Can't perform right now in practice, but hopefully for week 1 he is there. We'll have to wait and see. They bring in Adrian Claiborne, a solid defensive end, a veteran. They bring him in for basically a depth reason. I think he's going to play behind Myles Garrett and Olivier Vernon. I don't expect him to start, but a good depth piece. They have a good amount of depth on their defense. Another reason I like this team. Then for the draft, they took Jedrick Wills. I think it was 10th overall. That's a great pick. I had him and Andrew Thomas, 1A, 1B for me. I think taking him 10th overall is tremendous value. Put him in there at left tackle, let him play day one, let him develop. He's a good player. I love his technique. I think he's going to be a good player, Jedrick Wills. Then Grant Delpit brought in at safety. He has his missed tackle concerns, but outside of that, a tremendous player, really good playmaker, can create turnovers, can fly over the field and make tackles for you. He's a good player. Then Jordan Elliott, who's an interesting one. I did not expect him to fall to the 3rd round, but he did. Very explosive player, a good combine. So I think Jordan Elliott could be a nice fit for this Browns team. Hopefully he comes through for them. So as I said, if Freddie Kitchens was still here, I would not pick the Browns, but I like Kevin Stefanski that much. He loves to run the ball. They have 2 great backs here in Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. They have a really good offensive line now. I think it could be top 5 in the league maybe. So no, I don't want to say top 5. Top 10 offensive line in the league, I would say, for the Browns. And they have a young, exciting defense. They still have good young players. They have Denzel Ward, Myles Garrett, of course. They have Greedy Williams, hopefully, who develops, and a lot of good young players on this defense. And this division is tough for sure. They have the Steelers, the Ravens, but I think the Browns, talent-wise, are good enough to win 9+ games this year. I thought that about their talent last year, but I think the head coach and offensive line was a huge problem for them. It seems like they fixed their 2 biggest weaknesses on the team, being the head coach and the offensive line, and now I expect the Browns to be much better. So I don't know if it'll be this year or the year after, but I do expect the Browns soon to be a competitive team, and I do think it could happen in 2020. Number 4, we have the Denver Broncos. They've had a pretty eventful offseason. They lost some guys like Chris Harris, their longtime cornerback, really good player, went to the Chargers, unfortunately. Then they lost their center who broke out last year in Connor McGovern. They franchise tagged their safety, which was a good move. Justin Simmons, of course, that was a good move by them. But some other good moves, they traded for Jarrell Casey. They gave up like a 6th or 7th round for him. I mean, he's been one of the better defensive tackles the past 6-7 years, and getting him for a 6th or 7th round pick I thought was a great move. Not sure what's left on his contract, but it wasn't anything crazy, so for them I thought it was a nice move. Then they traded for AJ Bouye, who was amazing back in 2017. Took a step back the past couple years. I mean, maybe playing for Jacksonville wasn't thrilling for him, and he probably was not playing at a high level for that reason. So maybe going to a new environment will inspire him to play better. They gave up like a 4th round pick for him. I say why not? They got Graham Glasgow from the Lions. He's played every interior offensive line position, left guard, center, right guard. Pretty above average player in my mind, a good player. So that was a nice move as well. They gave him a decent amount of money, but still, they need some offensive linemen for, they have all these great weapons. They need an offensive line, obviously, so I like that move for Glasgow. Then they have Melvin Gordon. This one puzzled me, I'm not going to lie. I was not a fan of this one. They gave Melvin Gordon a decent amount of money as well. They already had Royce Freeman and Philip Lindsay. I don't know why they had to sign Melvin Gordon, but they did. did. Hopefully they find a way to make it work. They add a punter in Sam Martin, Christian Covington at defensive end, who was with the Texans for a lot of years, then went to the Cowboys last year. Then in the draft, got two really good receivers. Jerry Jeudy, obviously, that was great value. They got KJ Hamler, a very speedy slot receiver type from Penn State, I believe. Michael Ojemudia, they got him from Iowa, I believe, who's a good playmaker. Then they got Lloyd Cushenberry, who's probably going to play center for that team. So they have some talented pieces on this team for sure. I thought they had a good draft as well. And those who know me know I'm a big Drew Lock fan. I think he has top 10 upside at the quarterback position. Not sure it'll happen this year, but I think eventually Drew Lock will turn into one of the top 10 quarterbacks in the league. He definitely has the talent for it, in my opinion. He just has to put it all together. And the Broncos have given him all the weapons necessary to do so. He doesn't have a perfect offensive line, but it's an average one for sure as compared to the rest of the NFL teams. But his weapons are great. He has Noah Fant in year 2, who should break out one of these days. A very talented player. He has Cortland Sutton already. He has Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler. What else could you need? He has Phillip Lindsay, Melvin Gordon, has every weapon around him possible, and they're basically making life on him easier. They have some younger players on the roster like Dalton Reisner, Cortland Sutton, who I mentioned, Noah Fant. They have Bradley Chubb coming back from the ACL injury, and they have guys like Von Miller who need to step up, and AJ Boye, Jarrell Casey. If they can play like their usual selves, this team will go very far. I know, once again, it's a tough division. You have yourself the Chiefs, obviously. You have the Chargers. I know it's a pretty tough division. But at the same time, this team itself is very talented, and same thing as I said for the Cardinals, I believe. They will go as far as Kyler Murray brings them. Same thing goes for Drew Lock. If Drew Lock is playing like a star, they'll go far. If he's playing like a guy who's inexperienced and not playing well, then they might be a 6-7 win team. But if Drew Lock takes that next step, which I do think is very possible for him in year 2, this will be a really good team, probably a 10-11 win team if possible. So I love the moves they made for the veterans and getting Boye and Casey. Love what they did in the draft. They get Jeudy at a great value. They get KJ Hamler, who's going to fit this team very nicely. Cushenberry fell down the board as well, a good playmaker at cornerback. I think it's a pretty good draft in my opinion, so I'm excited to see what happens for this team. I think the Broncos have finally found their quarterback after searching for the last 6 years or so since Peyton Manning left. I think they finally found their guy, so I'm happy for them, and hopefully the Broncos perform well next year. I like this team a lot. As I said, they're probably not going to usurp the Chiefs already, but I think they're a talented team, and they could play for a wild card spot in 2020. And number 5, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a team that people really believe in or you really don't believe in them. Some people think they're a 6-win team. Some people think they're a 13-3 team. So for me, I lean towards that 13-3 side. I'm a believer in this team for sure. I think they'll win 10 or 11 games. Obviously, they add Tom Brady. They add Rob Gronkowski out of retirement. They add Joe Haeg, who was with the Colts for 4 seasons, I believe. They just added LaShawn McCoy, a veteran running back. I don't think he's that great at this point in his career, but still, it can't hurt. They drafted Tristan Wirfs. They traded up a pick for him to play right tackle. Good move by them. They needed one. Antoine Winfield Jr. is a guy I'm a big fan of. Happy that he landed on a good team. Keyshawn Vaughn, a very shifty running back, good receiving back. He could work well. Be the next James White maybe for Tom Brady. And then Tyler Johnson, who was a good slot receiver at Minnesota, I believe, put up some really good numbers. And I don't expect him to start over Chris Godwin, obviously. Maybe he plays outside a little bit, but we'll have to see. But I'm a fan of Tyler Johnson talent-wise. And for me, the Buccaneers offense gets all the attention, but honestly, their defense is pretty damn good. Like, people overlook it. They have good young defenders on their team. Devin White was like the 5th pick last year, a great linebacker, a lot of potential, showed a lot on tape last year. Jamel Dean, who got really good towards the second half of last year. Antoine Winfield Jr. is a great young defender. Vita Vea has been around for a little bit, but he's still very young. Sean Murphy-Bunting, I think, is in year 2 now, a young cornerback. They have a lot of veteran players as well. They still have Ndamukong Suh, who they re-signed. They have Levante David still playing at a high level. They have Jason Pierre-Paul still playing at a high level. It's not like this is just like a bunch of young guys. They have a good mixture of young and veteran defensive players, and I think their defense can be really good. I think Todd Bowles, as a defensive coordinator, has proved he's good at it. He's not a good head coach. We know that from the Jets, but he's a good play caller on defense and has a good philosophy. So I think he can do that. Then you have a good play caller in my mind than Bruce Arians. I've always been a big Bruce Arians fan. It seems like whoever he coaches, the quarterback puts up good numbers. I know Jameis Winston had the most turnovers last year, but if you take away the turnovers, Jameis really played well last year. He had a bunch of touchdowns, a bunch of passing yards. His stats look good outside of the turnovers, and honestly, Bruce Arians can't do that. Like, he can't do anything about that. That's a Jameis Winston problem. So his vertical offense seems to work wherever he goes. I'm a big fan of that. And Tom Brady's going to make better decisions than Jameis Winston was. And the Bucs, I think, went went 7-9 last year. So if you take away Jameis Winston's turnovers and just have a more conservative approach with a guy like Tom Brady, that 7 wins can turn into 10 or 11 wins. And I just think this defense is so underrated, and I think they have enough pieces on offense, obviously, with Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Gronkowski, O.J. Howard. They have so many weapons there that they'll be able to get the job done. And I think this might be one of the most efficient red zone teams in football. I just don't know how you can stop all those big body receivers, in the red zone. You can throw a jump ball to Mike Evans, you can throw a jump ball to O.J. Howard, Rob Gronkowski. I know Chris Godwin's not the physical force that Mike Evans is, but he can still catch basically anything in his direction. So I just don't know how you stop this team in close. And I'm not a huge fan of their running back, Ronald Jones. I know their offensive line isn't dominant. It's probably league average, I would say, but at the same time, they have a good receiving back in Keyshawn Vaughn, who could take the starting job at some point. So it's a really exciting team, and they do play in a division with the Saints. That's obviously tough. The Falcons are always up and down. The Panthers, I don't expect much from, but they could be a 7-8 win team at best. But some other big news for them is that their left tackle, Donovan Smith, might end up sitting out the 2020 season due to the COVID concerns. So we'll have to wait and see on that one. That would be a huge loss for them, obviously, in Tom Brady's blind side. Smith's not a top 5 left tackle, but he's top half in the league. He's a good left tackle, I would say. So to lose him would definitely be a big loss. So that would really suck for them. I kind of wish they signed Jason Peters looking back on it, but it is what it is. Too late now. So hopefully there's some type of solution there at left tackle, but we'll have to wait and see what his decision is. And I'm just a fan of them. I just think, they have to stay healthy, obviously. Can Gronk stay healthy and all that type of stuff? I mean, that's obviously a big piece of their defense. Can a guy like Jason Pierre-Paul stay healthy and stuff like that? So we'll have to see, but they have a lot of young, talented defenders. I'm actually really excited for this team. They might not put 40 points a game up like some people expect, but they might be a team that just scores enough points and allows their defense to take care of the job. That's kind of what I expect the Bucs to be. They might win some close games here and there, but they got the veteran quarterback. They know how to close out games and stuff like that, so I expect them to have a good year. I'm not sure this is a Super Bowl team, but I think they're pretty damn close. So, once again, let me know in the comments who you think the breakout teams of this year will be. It will be interesting to see. Giants fans, I'm sorry I did not have us in there, but maybe next year. I know I said it every year, but maybe next year. I'm not as confident in them as I am in these other teams. Hopefully I'm wrong though. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. And if you want me to make a video like this for teams I think will decline for 2020, then let me know. I feel like that would be a fun video to do as well. So let me know in the comments. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll talk to you next time.